What began as a standard promotional interview turned into one of the most explosive moments in daytime television history. When Harrison Ford appeared on The View to discuss his latest project, no one, not the audience, not the crew, and certainly not Ford himself, could have predicted how the conversation would spiral into a fiery confrontation that left the studios stunned and the actor storming off set. Ford, ever the seasoned professional, arrived early at the studio. Crew members described him as relaxed, engaging, and even cracking jokes with the makeup team. At 79, he'd weathered decades of interviews with journalists of all temperaments, always managing to remain composed with his signature dry humor and grace. Meanwhile, co-host Joy Behar was preparing for the segment with a level of intensity that raised eyebrows behind the scenes. Multiple staffers reported seeing her reviewing notes, whispering with her research team, and pacing backstage. When asked, she only said she had some interesting questions ready. No one knew how charged that statement truly was. The show began like any other array-like banter between the hosts. Laughter from the crowd. When Ford was introduced, he received a thunderous round of applause and walked out smiling, waving casually to the audience. The initial segment played out predictably. Whoopi Goldberg asked about his new film, and Ford answered with wit and professionalism. The audience was clearly entertained, and Ford seemed entirely at ease. But Joy Behar remained uncharacteristically silent, her posture tense, her eyes locked on Ford. When Goldberg passed the mic to her, the tone in the studio immediately shifted. "Actually, I do have a question," she said, her voice sharp. "Harrison, I think we need to talk about your political views and how they've evolved." Ford raised an eyebrow. "I'm not sure what you mean, Joy. I'm here to talk about the film." "Oh, but I think your personal beliefs are very relevant," she pushed, "especially considering some of the things you've said recently about environmental issues. Don't you think celebrities have a responsibility to be consistent with their activism?" Ford paused but responded calmly, "Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I try to keep my personal beliefs separate from my work. But I care about the environment, yes." "That's interesting," Behar replied with a smirk, "because your lifestyle doesn't exactly scream environmentalist. How do you justify your environmental advocacy with your frequent use of private jets?" The air in the studio shifted and the energy went from warm to icy. Ford's jaw tensed. "That's a bit of an oversimplification," he said. "Environmental issues are complex. I try to be responsible." "Responsible?" Behar laughed coldly. "You've taken more private flights in a year than most people take in a lifetime. Isn't that a little hypocritical?" The other co-hosts exchanged nervous glances. The audience murmured. The confrontation was no longer simmering, it was boiling. "I don't lecture people, Joy," Ford said. "I express concern. What I do in my private life is just that, private." Behar leaned forward. "Nothing is private when you're a public figure who talks about accountability. You can't preach about saving the planet while racking up a carbon footprint bigger than entire towns." Ford's eyes narrowed. "You're making assumptions. You don't know the full picture." "Oh, but I do," Behar said smugly, producing a folder. "Public flight logs, tax filings from your so-called environmental foundation, all available online. Your foundation spends more on admin than on actual environmental projects." The tension in the studio was now suffocating. Even the camera operators seemed frozen. Ford, visibly trying to control his anger, leaned in slightly. "You should be careful with your words," he said, voice low. "You're making dangerous accusations based on out-of-context data." "These are facts, Harrison," Behar fired back. "You live in multiple homes, collect vintage cars, vacation in private jets, and want us to believe you're serious about climate change?" Ford's composure cracked. "What are you trying to do here? Humiliate me? Create a viral moment?" "I'm trying to talk about accountability," Behar replied. "You can't advocate for change and live like the rules don't apply to you. And you can't call this journalism," Ford shot back. "This is ambush theater." Goldberg tried to jump in to change the topic, but was ignored. The two continued to spar, louder, angrier, More personal. Ford accused Behar of manufacturing drama for ratings. She accused him of hypocrisy masked as heroism, neither held back. "You don't know anything about me," Ford snapped. "And you don't know what I've done to hold powerful people accountable," Behar replied. "You sit behind this desk tearing people down and calling it truth," Ford said. "You create controversy and call it journalism." "I ask the hard questions," Behar insisted. "You provoke," he corrected. "You weaponize your platform to attack." At that, Ford stood up abruptly, the scraping of his chair echoing across the room. "You want to talk about hypocrisy? Look in the mirror. This isn't about the environment. This is about you trying to look righteous on television." "Sit down," Behar said sharply. Ford turned, his voice rising. "Don't you dare tell me what to do. You've been trying to tear me down from the second I walked in." "This is about truth," Behar snapped, standing as well. "This is about your ego," Ford replied. Both were now face to face at the studio, dead silent, the audience holding its breath. "You don't get to pretend you're some kind of hero," Behar growled. "You fly private, live in mansions, and act like the rest of us should conserve energy." Ford's reply cut through the air like a knife. "And you don't get to pretend you're a journalist when you're just a talk show host hiding behind buzzwords like accountability. You want a soundbite? Here's one. I'm done." And just like that, Ford walked off the set. The room remained frozen. No applause, no laughter. Just the echo of footsteps and the stunned silence of an interview that had turned into something unforgettable. The confrontation would go viral within hours. Clips circulated with headlines calling it the interview that went too far. But those who watched it unfold live knew it was something deeper, a raw, unscripted clash between principle and pride, between image and intent. And for the first time in over 50 years of interviews, Harrison Ford had walked away.